Hey, it's TK11697 here, and today I'm going to talk about making the ears fit for a Walt Trooper Factory TK. We're going to talk about trimming the ears, which is very important obviously, but we're also going to talk about how you construct the helmet to fit the ears, and that's where I think a lot of people get hung up. Trimming the ears is actually pretty straightforward. There's a discernible line on an untrimmed ear where you can take a black pen and go over it. This is a right side ear. You'll notice that there's going to be more material on the side that's facing outward on the side here, and there's less in the back. And that's because the cap and back are going to overlap on the faceplate. So if you follow this trim line, it's a pretty good guide to how the final trim should be. Of course, you have to make some adjustments, but that's what you're gonna start with, and it's not going to deviate too much from there. The ear itself is fairly thin. On some of these, I've got them thick, but they're supposed to be pretty thin. You notice the difference with the trim line here is I have a curve, and instead of a gentle slope, I've got it at an angle here. And the reason is that there's an angle here. And so to avoid looking like this, where there's a bit of a gap, I like doing it this way to close that gap. So again, this is the trim, nothing too special about it. How you cut it out is a personal preference. I know some people prefer using tin snips. I do that initially, but then to really scoop out the hard to reach places in there, handheld belt sander is just a fantastic way to really do fine detail in anything once you get used to it. The other part is the helmet, and I've deliberately constructed this helmet wrong because I think it's a way that a lot of people do it initially because they don't know how the sides go. I think they put these pieces too far apart, put this too high. Now the height's not that much big of a deal for ears, but the placement here is. And if you notice, I've got a hole pre-drilled. So the way this helmet is now, it's for someone with a big head. It's creating a lot more space in the bottom of the helmet so you can fit your head in. But and the helmet angles out like that, so it looks pretty good. But for the ear, just the way the mold is made, I'm going to change the location. Oh, I'll show you the problem, I guess, first. Put the ear on, and there's so much space here. You got to push this up and try to get this in, but it doesn't really want to cooperate because there's a huge gap made by where this helmet's where these two halves are placed. Just by changing the screw maybe 2 centimeters down into the front, changes the whole thing. Changes the whole way that the ear sits there. So let me change that real quick. So you're going to find that screw placement is going to be very important. So I put the screw now down at the other hole, and the gap has shrunk significantly. I mean, there's still a gap, but it's tiny. And when I put the ear on, well, not only does the bottom part look a little better, but when I put the ear on and I push the plastic in like I will, look at that. The ear fits almost perfectly. I'm going to use a bit of a heat gun and a dab of crazy glue to keep it in place, but aside from that small little gap by where the strips are right here, it fits fine. I said you just push it in, put your 2 screws in through the ear, 1 screw through the bottom, a little bit of heat and crazy glue in place, and it sits perfectly. And I think that's where a lot of people run into trouble. I said again, this is the same for this side. Giant gap, ear recessed all the way back. If I push this screw up to here, not going to be a problem. And if you're going to paint your helmet, you could take it the extra step where you could take some Bondo or you could take some DevCon plastic weld. You could fill in the gap and paint it. So this is a helmet I've done. So it's going to be a display helmet. And this is a the helmet I troop with. I said I've actually sealed the gap and painted over it. It's seamless. If you're familiar with model building, if you're confident in your abilities to sand and paint, you could try to do that. You don't have to do that, because if you look, first of all, you look at the photos from the movies, there are giant gaps. And so that's not a problem. You could have giant gaps in your ears, and that's probably screen accurate. But if you're OCD like me and you want to fill in the gaps, you could do that, and that's not going to be a problem either. Here, I'm barely putting any pressure on this at all. And just screw placement. That's really what it is. I said I get it, you know, a little dab of crazy glue, the heat gun, just to keep this form. Not too much, because you could really screw up a helmet if you put too much heat on, but a little bit of heat, and that's it. So the ear goes right on. I know I'm probably making this sound a lot easier than it is. I've done probably 40 helmets at this point, so I've learned a thing or two, but that was my most common mistake. I was putting the face on with the cap, and I wasn't thinking about it much. I thought, it looks good. You know, I got plenty of room here. Face is stuck out a little bit. Got a lot more extra room down here. I could just slip the helmet on, and I was screwing up the build. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was making it a lot more complicated than it needed to be for me. And now I've learned, and I do them pretty easily now. So I hope that helps. I'll show you the trim one more time. If you really want to be accurate, do yourself a favor. Either get yourself a little Dremel, which I think I got this off at Trooper Bay for 80 bucks for the whole kit. Very, very useful. Or if you're really going to do some home improvement or some crafting, handheld belt sander. Very, very useful tool for cutting, well, cutting anything, but it really digs out the ABS, and it's good for smoothing things out and stuff. Alright, that's it. If you have any more questions, I'll try to answer them.